What's up, peeps? Nick Battle, aka NinosCorner, man. Today we're going to talk about how the coronavirus is affecting sports, guys. Primarily college football, pro football, and things of that nature. But first off, guys, I got to just start this off with. If you like what you listen to, guys, please go to any podcast platform that you listen to, whether it's Google Play, whether it's Apple Podcast, Stitcher, what have you. Give me a 5-star review. Give me a 5-star comment, man. That kind of keeps the lights on when it comes to this podcast, man. I truly appreciate it. Now, let's talk about coronavirus and what's been happening over the past couple weeks. So, guys, we're looking at Wednesday. Wednesday alone, we had nearly 53,000, guys, new cases of the coronavirus. The largest single day spike since we've been tracing this since March, April timeframe. Now, couple that into sports. So, an article came out about LSU Wednesday, and it basically said that they're expecting between 18 and 20 of the players to have coronavirus. Now, guys, let's put this into perspective. It's roughly, 80 to 85 players on each team. You're counting scholarship guys and your walk-ons. So you're looking at about 85 players, right? Even if it's 100 players for walk-ons. If you have 20 cases, guys, that's anywhere between 20 and 25% of your team, of the complete team, has coronavirus. Think about that for a minute. It's 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5 kids, whether it's 80 kids on a team or 100 kids on a team. But 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5 of these student athletes has the virus at LSU. Couple that with the team that LSU beat in the national championship. Clemson had 23 cases, right? Alabama had, I think, 13 cases. Auburn had 5 cases in one day. Texas had between 8 and 12 cases. This thing is running rampant, guys, and we have to get a stranglehold on this. The thing that's floating around now is, are we going to have a college football season? So I was in the grocery store last week, and I met a guy. I had my Texas hat on. He said, "Hey, I see you're from Texas. You guys are having a bunch of cases down there when it comes to coronavirus." I said, "Yes, we are." He had a South Carolina shirt on. He said that Clemson, of course, had a bunch of cases, but I don't think South Carolina had gotten hit hard yet. And he was basically saying that he sure wants his college football. Now, my reaction to that was, hey, these are student athletes, right? With student, quote unquote, guys. If you don't see me on the YouTube, quote unquote, student in front of the athlete. So they're students first. Football is secondary. Yes, they're brought on scholarship to play football, but they are students first. The first priority is for these students to get their degrees. And to get their degrees, have to go to class and yada, 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 right? So football should be secondary because 99% of the kids who are playing in the college football game will not go to the pros. They'll never know what it is to be in the pros. They'll never know what it is to have the opportunity to go to the pros, but that doesn't mean they're bad players because they're only one of 100 kids to get a scholarship at that school, especially at a D1 school. So they're student athletes. So let them be students first. Let them go to class. Let them finish their degrees. Now, I know the school is going to miss out on a lot of money. That's why I think the NCAA is going to push hard, especially the conferences. You see this with the SEC. They were talking about having their own SEC conference play where they didn't play anybody else and just have their own tournament or their own season because they have enough teams, right? And just do that and keep the season going, whether or not college football says we're going to go or not. I think it's a bad idea because you're putting these kids at risk. What's going to happen when one of these kids dies from a coronavirus incident or has no symptoms of coronavirus and has the virus and ends up passing out or dying on the field due to that, coupled with the overexertion of himself because of it being such a physical and demanding sport. And I don't think people are really going to take this serious in the sports arena until somebody, I hate to say it, but until somebody dies from this. Somebody that we know, a player that we all know, a player that is famous, a college player that has potential to be a top pick in the draft, or even a college player that has the potential to be a pick in the first 2 to 4 rounds, a guy who's going to make a roster. So these teams are going to lose a lot of money. We know how much the revenue shares are when it comes to these conferences. However, is the revenue share more important than the child? Is the sport more important than these kids getting their education? That's the big fight now, is that people want to say when it comes to the college athlete that they should just be happy with what they got because they're getting a free education. And I didn't get a free education, I was going to school. You hear people say that. However, if that is the case and they're getting free education, then that should be the first priority. And the first priority should be for them to get their degree. So I don't think we're going to have a college football season, guys. I don't. I don't think at all. Now, how does this affect the college players? It affects them greatly. We have an NFL draft that's supposed to come up next April, and the NFL has already said that they are not going to move the NFL draft. So what happens if the season starts in the spring? Because we have a vaccine for this virus. What happens then? Will kids get drafted while the season's going on? Will kids just elect not to play in the season because they want to get drafted and don't want to hurt themselves right before the draft? A lot of things are going to shake up. This year in sports is going to have the biggest asterisk that you're ever going to see. We're already seeing it in basketball where they're supposed to have a playoff starting in July, but how's that going to work? Because if the playoffs start at the end of July, what's going to happen when a guy like LeBron James or Anthony Davis or Kawhi Leonard gets the coronavirus and they got to self-quarantine for 14 days during the playoffs? That playoff series is over for that team. So this is going to be an interesting and interesting offseason for for sports, and interesting postseason for basketball, and interesting offseason leading up to the start of college football and pro football. How does this all work? I don't know. Nobody has the answers. Hopefully, we should find out soon. But if I had to put my money on it, I don't think we're going to have a college football season. And I'm perfectly fine with that. Selfishly, I want the season to go on because I am a diehard college football fan. I'm a Longhorn to the day I die. Bleed orange, cry white. But I love college football. I don't care if it's watching Baylor versus OU. I don't care if it's watching Alabama versus Auburn. I don't care if it's watching Oklahoma State versus anybody. It could be Oklahoma State versus North Dakota. I don't care. I love college football. So, but when it comes to the kids, I'm going to always be in the player side. And if the player's health is at jeopardy, then I don't think the players need to play. If it's at jeopardy besides even playing in the game, if it's something that could, eventually hurt them without them even stepping on the field, then I don't want them doing it. They are student athletes first. Let them get their degrees. Let them get a degree from a great institution. So I would say let that happen. Let them do their thing, and we'll see how this goes on. Now, when it comes to the NFL season, what's going to happen with that? I think there's too much money to be made, but we're seeing so many NFL cases where people are popping positive for a coronavirus test. I said popping positive, like they're popping for a drug test or something. But but people are having positive tests when it comes to the coronavirus. But it's going to be very interesting, guys. What do you guys think about that? Should these college students play the season, or should they not? Selfishly, I want them to play the season, but if I had to put a vote on it right now, I'll say don't do it. Let them concentrate on being a student first. Look at the schools in the Pac-12. California is not even allowing their students to come back to campus in the fall. So how can we allow these kids to go and play football if the students can't even come to campus? So we can't have a certain set of rules for athletes because they are bringing in the money for these schools, but tell everybody else, be safe, stay at home, but you get out there and go run that football or dribble that basketball. Now, we already saw, talking about dribbling the basketball, we already saw what went down with March Madness and having that canceled. So that, I think March Madness generates around $4 billion altogether just in that 1 month, or in that that 1 5-week time frame. $4 billion in that time frame. College football, if March Madness cannot go on and college basketball is doing the right thing, then college football is probably going to follow suit. That's just my opinion. So it's going to be very interesting. But let's go to a commercial break, and we're going to talk about the actual ramifications about what's going to happen with these players post this season, if there isn't a season. All right, guys, and we're back. Prior to us going to the commercial break, we were talking about what are going to be the what are going to be the actual ramifications of the college football players this year who might not have the opportunity to play due to college football maybe being canceled this year, due to the coronavirus and all the cases that we have, just going on. So let's say, for instance, Trevor Lawrence. I think we all know Trevor Lawrence is going to be the number one pick in the draft, regardless of what happens in college football this year, minus a major setback from him. So for a guy like Trevor Lawrence, who knows he's going to be a top pick in the draft, if not the top pick of the draft, but he'll definitely be a top 5 pick, maybe this is good for him because he has no wear and tear in his body. He comes in as a quarterback that has played in 2 national championship games, won one, and had a season to where, well, actually won. I don't know how many games straight he won, but he's going to be a top pick in the draft, most likely the number 1 pick. So he has no wear and tear in his body. He's going to go be the prototypical starting quarterback in the NFL and only had to play 2 years of college football, minimum wear and tear. Okay? Now, that's all fine and dandy, and we know the guys who are going to be the guys who will be picked in the top of the draft. But for instance, who's going to be that Joe Burrow this year? Nobody in their right mind would have thought Joe Burrow would have been the number 1 pick in the draft, let alone the Heisman Trophy winner and national championship MVP. Nobody in their right mind would have thought that about Joe Burrow before last season. So just think if Joe Burrow didn't have that season, where would he be? Where? Would he even be drafted? Right? So what new quote unquote Joe Burrow is not going to be able to shine his last year in college football and be able to have an opportunity to go to NFL? I'm a Texas guy. You guys know that. I always talk about it. So we got a guy like Devin Duvernay, who showed flashes his whole career. For the first 3 years, he showed flashes. His last year, it's the year that he balled out. And I don't think anybody expected him to have that kind of season. One of the single best wide receiver seasons in the country last year, and one of the single best in Texas football history at that school. And we had some great wide receivers come to Texas. We had the Roy Williams guys. We had Sloan Thomas. We had some really good wide receivers. Marquise Goodwin. So you had players. You had L.J. Humphrey. So. Yeah, we have players at that position who had some really good seasons for Texas. And Devin Duvernay, the Shipley brothers. How can I forget the Shipley brothers, too? All these guys had nice careers in the league. But Devin Duvernay came out of nowhere at his last season. I won't say out of nowhere, but he came out and did things that we didn't think he was going to do. And he had his money year. He had his money season. And that money season basically got him drafted to go play for Baltimore. If Devin Duvernay doesn't have that season, is he drafted in the late rounds, maybe 6, 7 round, or an undrafted free agent? So who's going to be that Devin Duvernay this year that's going to miss this opportunity to show scouts that this is who he is and this is what he does? That's going to be the interesting thing about COVID. And it's not just about players for that ilk. It's going to be also about players who were highly, highly touted, who did play a lot, and maybe did really well their first and second year. But this last year, the production wasn't what they thought it was. So they came back to school to show the scouts that I am what you saw my first 2 years, not my last year. Now they might not have the opportunity to show it. So it's going to be interesting. We said earlier that the NFL said that they're not going to postpone the draft, but I think they have to. I think in the end that they are going to have to postpone this draft because how are you going to grade players? How are you going to grade and evaluate players with no film? Is there going to be a combine for all the players? It's just straight ridiculous, right? That's not going to happen. So I think if the season is going to go on, I don't think it's going to happen in the fall. I think it'll happen in the spring. If the season happens in the spring, saying that there is some kind of vaccine that will happen, I think the NFL is going to have to adjust how they do things this year, just like they did last year. Well, not last year, but just a few months ago. where they had the virtual draft, and they didn't have a draft where you had to walk on stage. It was virtual, and I thought that was really nice. They did a great job of that. Instead of a virtual draft next year, the NFL might have to have a draft that is postponed until after whatever college football season we have. If college football season, let's say it's condensed to 9 games, with a playoff run for each conference for the last 3 games to kind of get things moving, right? Maybe it's something like that. Who knows? But the NFL is going to have to adjust to that if they want to be able to completely evaluate players. So those are my 2 cents on it, guys. But here nor there. Thank you guys for tuning in, guys. You guys know I always end this, man. Do you. Don't be afraid to fail. Outgrow your environment. Understand your brilliance, man. So let's talk about that again, man. Hope you guys enjoyed this, man. Let me know what you think. Leave those comments and just let me know if you think that these schools should still have a college football season. I think it's going to be very interesting to see the comments that are going to be here and what the NFL ultimately decides to do. On that note, man, I'm out. Do you. Nino's Corner is out.